Welcome to week one of the spring quarter Bible Studies for Life. It's spring 2022. Beautiful time of year. Looking forward to our study. We're going to be spending a lot of time in the Gospels over this next quarter. We'll be in John for about half of it, and then we'll be in Matthew for the second half. So looking forward to all of this. I think it's some great passages that we're going to be reading and kind of going through some long stuff. Today we start in John chapter 13, and we're basically looking at this events that happen in the upper room with Jesus at the Lord's Supper, and some of those things that occurs. They're gathering there in the upper room. So good stuff, and look forward to it. Glad you're watching. Hope you subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Like the video, share it with others, comment on it, let us know how God's using it, and that just they tell me helps the algorithm. I don't know what that means, but I guess it does. So let's dive into John chapter 13 today. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had given everything into his hands, that he had come from God and that he was going back to God. So he got up from supper, laid aside his outer clothing, took a towel, tied it around himself. Next, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet and to dry them with the towel tied around him. Clearly, we're in the upper room when this occurs, and man, what a scene! What a scene! I just, you think about Jesus washing their feet, and that was the job reserved for servants. That was a lowly job they thought of. But I want us to look at the beginning, because I think this first verse here is really important for us to understand how Jesus does this, why he does it, is all wrapped up in there. He knew the Father had given everything into his hands, that he'd come from God and that he was going back to God. Okay, Jesus knew who he was. He knew why he had come. He knew what his role was. He knew that he was the God of the universe. Jesus knew who he was. Okay, he wasn't just a man. He knew that he was God. He knew that he had everything, that he was going to go back to God, that this place where he was not where he was going to be forever. He knew what his future held. He knew what his past was. He had full and total confidence in who he was, where he was going, what he was doing, why he was doing, all of that, right? Now, why does John put this here? Well, I think he puts that there because Jesus knew who he was and knew where he was going and knew what was going on. He was self-assured, we might say. He was confident in who he was and where he stood in the universe, right? Because of that, he could take off his coat, put a towel around himself, and wash their feet, and not feel demeaned, and not feel that this is below me, not feel that somehow he has he's taken on, he's become this servile person of low estate. All of those things that we might associate with that job. Because Jesus knew who he was, he could serve. He didn't have any pride here. He didn't have any ego that he thought might get bruised by doing this. He was confident in who he was and where he stood with the Lord, and so he could serve joyfully, willingly. He didn't have to worry about what other people thought about him and how they might look at him. It didn't matter to him. You see, that's why I think this first part's important here. Okay, so then he goes down, he starts to wash their feet and dry them, okay? And he comes to Simon Peter, who asked him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Now, clearly he's already washed some of the disciples. Right now they're all sitting on the floor, so they have to turn. He's not under a table or anything like that. Everybody knows, and as soon as he starts doing it, everybody's watching, right? So he's washed the feet of some of the other disciples, and he gets to Peter, and Peter's like, "You gonna wash my feet?" Well, Jesus said, "Well, what I'm doing you don't realize now, but afterward you'll understand." Peter's like, "Why are you washing my feet? What is this about?" He says, "Well, you don't get it now, but you'll get it soon." And Peter says, "Well, you'll never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "If I don't wash you, you have no part with me. If you don't let me do this with you, then you're denying, you don't have any opportunity. You're not letting me serve you. You're not letting me do what I am commanded to do, in a sense, by his Father, but what he is doing is for the benefit of those who, in showing them this invitation into relationship with him that's different than it has ever been. They have been his disciples, but now he is being their servant. This relationship, he's showing them this aspect of the relationship, and then inviting them, I've done this for you, now we're going to see it, now you're going to go do it for others, and if you won't let me do this for you, then you can't do this for others, and really calling him out on this, hey, if you want to be a part of this group, then this is going to have to happen. Okay? Now, not that by washing their feet they're in that, we'll see that in a minute, but that if he doesn't wash their feet, they can't be, is in essence what he says. Peter, being the guy that he is, then says, well, Simon Peter said to him, Lord, well, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. Just wash all of me. One who is bathed, Jesus told him, doesn't need to wash anything except his feet, but he is completely clean. You are clean, but not all of you. Oh, here's this little shot towards Judas, right? We know that. So get the sense he washed Judas's feet too. And this Judas was there, he washed his feet, right? But he tells Peter, so let's stick here. Not only my feet, but also my hands. He says, you don't need to wash anything except your feet. You're already clean. I've already you're completely clean. You're clean, and not all of you. Okay, so we get a statement that I think speaks to what we might say the salvation of Judas, right? But he said, you're clean, but your feet need to be washed. And I don't know how we ought to, Jesus is clearly telling them this is all I'm doing, but there is a sense here where he's saying you're already part of me. You're part of my body. You're part of this kingdom. He's not saying that straight out, but there is that sense, and I almost wonder if it's not an idea that, look, once you're saved, once you're part of that, you don't need all of you washed. You just need the part that's dirty washed. You don't get saved again. You don't need to get saved again. Once you're saved, just get the part that gets dirt on it clean. Cleanse that part, right? Okay, I don't know. That's just a thought I have about that. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, now here's where Jesus now makes application out of this, okay? For him, this was like one of the Old Testament prophets, like things that Ezekiel had to do, or Jeremiah had to do, or Isaiah. It's kind of his life is the example here. It says, I have washed your feet. You also ought to wash one another's feet, for I have given you an example. My life is your example, that you also should do just as I have done for you. Truly, I tell you, a servant is not greater than his master, and a messenger is not greater than the one who sent him. So he's telling him, I did this for you, now you should do this for one another. And I think that we should see that he's not just speaking about washing of feet, but he's talking about all that Jesus has done for them. All that he has done for them, that's what he has been their example, not just in this moment here in the upper room, but for the entire existence that he has had with them, the 3 years they've walked together. And here he is in the last night of his earthly life, living with them before crucifixion, and he's telling them, look, do just as I have done for you. You do for others what I have done for you. Let me be your example. And then this, a servant is not greater than his master, a messenger not greater than the one who sent him. And I just like this. I mean, there's, the idea about who is who in this deal, and that Jesus is clearly the master, and they're the servants, but he's saying, I did this for you. Well, if I can do this for you, then you ought to be able to do it for others. But I want you to see the two names that he gives to the disciples. He calls them servants and messengers. He says, you're a servant. That is, you're to follow. We're servants of Christ. We do what he tells us to. He is our Lord. So I was preaching last week, and I said, you don't have, there is no way to say Lord, but that we can't say, yes, you are Lord, but it doesn't work. If he's Lord, then we don't get to say but. We just have to do it, We are a servant, he's a master, but we're also a messenger who go with the message that he's given us. We have the message of the gospel, the message of salvation, the message of forgiveness, of grace, of mercy, of peace, of joy, of love. We have that message, and we must take that message. We are not greater than the one who sent him. We're not greater than him. We are the messenger. That's who we are. That's our role, to take that message to the world. So I hope that helps as you go through this. I thought I would add at the end of each week, maybe try to add a couple of questions that you might want to ask to your class as you go through it, things that you might think about. You can use them if you want to, don't use them if you don't. It doesn't matter to me, but what keeps some people from serving, and why do you think Peter refused Jesus' gesture? What was going on there? But anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks for teaching and being involved in the lives of others and taking up that role. It's so important, so important. I appreciate your watching. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Subscribe. Hit the little bell thing. I think that gives you a notification when the videos go live. And then also be sure and copy or share it with others. Comment on it. Like the video if nothing else. I appreciate it. God bless you. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.